Hello everybody! Today we are looking at the 2025 version of Lilo and Stitch. This was directed by Dean Fleischer Camp and stars Maya Kealoha, Sydney Elizabeth Agudong, and the voice of Chris Sanders. Somewhere out in space, mad scientist Dr. Jumba Jukiba uses his genetic engineering skills to create Stitch. He is a small and nearly indestructible creature designed for chaos and destruction. But also cute and fluffy! Stitch escapes, steals a spaceship, and crash lands on Earth in Hawaii. Disguising himself as a dog, he is adopted by a little girl named Lilo, who teaches him the importance of family. I did not see the original Lilo and Stitch when it originally came out. I was in college at the time, and I was too grown up for Disney animated movies or some such bullshit. But I eventually saw it years later and really enjoyed it. Of course, Disney has been cranking out the live-action adaptations of their classic animated fare, and this is not only their most recent live-action movie, but the most recent animated film to be adapted, as the original came out in 2002. And with any remake, the main question I have to ask is, did it do enough to justify its existence? And honestly, I'm not sure it did. I wouldn't say it's a bad movie. It was totally fine, with the exception of the ending, which we'll get to, but if we only had the original and never had the 2025 version, I would not say that's a big loss. I do appreciate that they at least tried to do a few things a little differently. In the original version, the character Cobra Bubbles was both a social worker and a former CIA agent. In this version, they kinda split the CIA social worker into two separate characters. Cobra, who is played this time by Courtney B. Vance, is solely a government alien hunter. And the social worker is played by Tia Carrera, who was the voice of Nani in the original, and I did think it was kinda cool they found a place for her. Unfortunately, a side effect of this is the Cobra character is not nearly as interesting, because part of the joke was he doesn't look like your typical social worker. But he does look like your typical government agent. They also added something to Nani's story. This time around, she apparently got a full-ride scholarship to UC San Diego to study marine biology, which Lilo hilariously keeps referring to as joining the Marines. But she keeps turning it down so she can stay in Kauai and take care of Lilo. There's also a sequence they added after Stitch crash lands on Earth that was not in the original, where he ends up terrorizing a nearby wedding party so he can get some of their cake. It was a very fun and chaotic scene, and I dug it. They also changed the disguises used by Jumba and Pleakley so they're not just aliens wearing human clothes, which is fine for animation, but that wouldn't really work in live action. This time they have some kind of a digital camouflage device that makes them look human. And that means Zach Galifianakis and Billy Magnussen can appear on camera as well as doing the voices. And both are excellent in this. They were very funny and played off each other quite well. It was an interesting choice to have Jumba be the main villain this time around, as Captain Gantu is not in the movie at all. And in the original, there was a small gag about how Stitch won't be able to survive on Earth because it's mostly water, but he just happens to crash land on this tiny little island in the Pacific. This time around, they expand on his vulnerability to water, and I actually liked what they did with that. Overall, the story is still mostly the same and still has a lot of the charm of the original. Lilo is still the weird, mischievous kid no one understands. Stitch ends up in an animal shelter, disguises himself as a dog, and is adopted by Lilo. And Nani is desperately still trying to hold the family together after the death of their parents, which is not easy because Lilo is a little shit. It does make her a very sympathetic character, but I lost track of how many jobs she lost because of Lilo. There is still a lot of Elvis in the soundtrack, and I'm glad they kept that in. And a lot of the story beats are still present, and some of the dialogue even seems to be identical. Stitch basically gives the exact same speech at the end of this movie as he did in the original. "This is my family. I found it all on my own." It's word for word the same. I'm not even sure they bothered to have Chris Sanders re-record that. They may have just copied his audio from the original. I'd have to listen to the two side by side to see if it's actually the same, but it sounded like it. The visual effects that they used for the alien characters looked pretty good overall. I thought they did a very good job with Stitch. The only times it didn't really work was when one of the human characters had to physically touch him. You could tell they were pretending to touch something that wasn't really there, and it didn't quite work. And now it's time to talk about the ending, and we are getting into spoiler territory, so if you don't want the spoilers, mute the video until this goes away. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You have been warned, here we go. There's a point where Lilo ends up in the hospital and Nani is stuck with a massive bill because they don't have health insurance. And the social worker tells her, hey, all you have to do is just give up custody of Lilo and the state will pay for everything. I'm calling bullshit on that one. I'm sure the exact amount of money varies by state, but I have my doubts that they're covering 100% of the medical bills. Come on. It also seems really manipulative on the part of the social worker. I don't think that's what the filmmakers were going for, but that's how it came across. And at the end of the movie, Nani does lose custody of Lilo. And this is presented as a good thing. No, really. Because now she doesn't have to worry about Lilo and can go off to college. Isn't that wonderful? Correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't this go against the entire point of the movie? Ohana means family. Family means nobody gets left behind. Unless you got a scholarship, in which case, fuck you, Lilo. And what's really infuriating is the movie is trying to have its cake and eat it too, because Nani and Lilo just happen to have a neighbor that is a close family friend and is totally willing to take Lilo in. Oh, how goddamn convenient. And Nani just happened to swipe an alien portal gun so she can zap herself from San Diego back to Kauai at the drop of a hat. And all of that sounds great in the movie, but in the real world, where you might not necessarily have a neighbor that's willing to take care of the kid and, an alien portal gun, the mood would be very different, I think. It's just disregarding the entire point of Lilo and Stitch and the importance of family, and the whole thing comes across as tone-deaf and disingenuous. And I'm not trying to paint the entire foster care system with broad strokes. There are plenty of good foster parents out there. There are plenty of valid reasons for a child to go into foster care. But the movie seems to be suggesting that handing your kids over to the government is always a good idea, and ooh, no. Lord, no. I do still think it's a totally fine movie overall, but again, I don't think it did enough to justify its existence. Maybe I would have a better opinion if it wasn't for that ending, because that really did not do it for me. I don't think you need to rush out to see this one in theaters. You're totally fine waiting for it to hit Disney+. For that matter, you're better off just watching the original on Disney+. And that's all I have to say about Lilo and Stitch. Till next time, take care.